I had the good fortune of interviewing Ray Brown one time. I was filling in for Larry Smith, and he had set up the interview, and then I think he got ill and couldn't come in that night, so I filled in for him, and I got Ray Brown and Gene Harris, who were appearing at the Jazz Showcase, and so they came in like after midnight because Larry was on overnight, right?
Yep.
So they came in, and I'm so sorry I don't have that on tape. They were so much fun. Ray Brown was a riot, So sometimes I was lucky enough to get people who were willing to communicate, and I was always willing to connect with them and be myself.
Hey everybody, Mike Jeffers, and welcome to Chicago Music Revealed. We are here doing a special International Jazz Day feature. I guess we're going to be featuring a lot of International Jazz Day interviews in the next coming weeks. We've got an incredible experience happening here in Chicago. And April 26th at the Cultural Center, they are hosting a special panel, all part of the International Jazz Day, International Jazz Month celebration here in Chicago. It's entitled Our Jazz Life, a celebration of the history of jazz radio in Chicago. Of course, that's from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Cultural Center, 78 East Washington. I'm sure everybody knows where that is. It is free to the public, so please come in and check this out. And I am very excited to be talking to Richard Steele. I'm sure many of you remember Richard Steele, know Richard Steele from radio, from TV, from announcing at the jazz festivals for many, many years, and just being an overall jazz enthusiast and supporter. And you've probably seen him out in the clubs. Well, we've got him here. He's going to be part of this panel, and we're going to catch up with him and find out what people can expect to hear at this upcoming panel on Sunday, April 26th. Richard, good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you too, Mike.
So let's talk a little bit about the panel first, and then I want to talk a little bit about your background, because just reading about your bio, it's fascinating to me how you've been in. I mean, geez, you've been in jazz media, shall we say, or media in general for, over 40 years plus. And I'm sure it's evolved over the time that you've been in it. In fact, I know it has. So that was a loaded question. But let's talk a little bit about this panel first. So what do you know about it? I know you guys are going to be up there telling stories, but what kind of subject matters are you going to be digging into?
Well, my guess is that, going back a few years in terms of what people remember about who played jazz on the radio as a jazz host. And I guess it depends on how old you are, what you remember. And probably one of the reasons I was included is because of my age. You know what I mean? But we'll probably talk about the involvement of those particular people who played jazz on the radio, and how much that influenced the whole concept of Chicago jazz and allowing people to hear it on a regular basis. Obviously, going out to clubs was one aspect of it, but being able to turn your radio on and hear that music being played is made a whole huge, big difference in terms of the acceptability of the music itself.
That's something that I don't think people, especially of the younger generation these days, they're used to YouTube. They're used to just automatically being able to hear anything, anytime, anywhere. But back then, I mean, I can remember sitting there waiting for Larry Smith to come on at midnight when I'm coming back from a gig or something, and he would always have some burning stuff playing until like 5 o'clock in the morning. I had experience and hear all these different artists that I didn't even know existed, because, you get into a little pocket of people that you see at the clubs and stuff, and it really would expand out. But, with your background and everything you have done over the years, you must have seen the evolution. I mean, you're talking, for the people that are watching this, just imagine Richard, like back in the 70s and 80s, playing things that up and comers maybe from Kansas City that nobody knew about in Chicago, or from New York that nobody knew about in Chicago, right? I mean, that was a big bridge where you kind of brought the whole community together with radio.
I had a very unusual background, though. The reality is I did R&B radio for a long time, and I always had an interest in jazz. I got into radio in the beginning because I loved jazz. I was living in Brooklyn, New York, and I used to listen to jazz on the radio there. And my whole idea about getting into radio was to be able to play jazz at night and be cool on the radio, right? And when I got into the business, I found out that most of the people who played jazz on the radio were older, had been around a long time, and there weren't that many people my age, because I was very young at that point in my early 20s. And so I continued to do R&B radio over the years, but I always went to jazz clubs wherever I happened to be working. And when I came back to Chicago after working a couple of other cities doing R&B radio, um, I always managed to go to the jazz clubs and there's some people who knew that I was an R&B jock, and they said, well, like Joe Siegel used to play. I know you play that Diddy by Diddy music.
Yeah. Wow.
I said, Joe, I love all the music, but I love jazz, So, yeah. So my background was I was always connected to the music, but I didn't start to actually get a chance to play jazz on the radio until the 1970s. I used to fill in for Daddy O'Daly at one point, and
Wow.
and Daddy O and I became very tight. And I think I was the only one who ever filled in for him on a on his radio show. Because when
Talk a little bit about Daddy O'Daly, because I know the name, I know a little bit of his background, but you knowing him, that has to be. I mean, for the people that are listening that probably don't even know who Daddy O'Daly is, he's one of the foremost forefounders of the whole radio jazz movement.
Absolutely, he was like the biggest name in jazz on the radio. I mean, he was the one who everybody referred to when they talked about jazz radio. He Daddy-O used to be a bartender at the Pershing Hotel. The Pershing is where Ahmad Jamal recorded the But Not For Me, that famous recording that everybody knows and plays. But Daddy-O was a bartender, and Daddy-O was discovered sort of by uh, a guy who Dave Garroway used to be the host of the Today Show way back in the day in the 50s. And a lot of cats used to come to the Pershing Hotel where Daddy-O was bartending, and Dave Garroway was one of those people. Dave Garroway loved the jazz, and so Daddy-O was very clever. He could mix drinks and throw the bottle up in the air and catch it and pour the drinks and all that. And he'd rhyme while he was doing that and talk about jazz. So Dave Garroway suggested, "Man, you got a talent. You should be on the radio." And that's how Daddy O'Daly got started.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and he became, because he was a tremendous self promoter and business guy, and
Yep.
so back in the day, people who did radio shows like that, you went out and got your own sponsors, and he was really big on being able to go out and get black businesses to sponsor his radio show, and so Daddy-O became the man. I mean, I've got a photo of him in a book I've got where he was bringing Billie Holiday on stage.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Strong, very strong.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and
Mr.
The Pershing Hotel, I mean, everybody played there, so he had to know all of them anyways, because they were
Yeah,
all
he
probably
did.
hanging out at the bar, right?
He knew everybody. He knew everybody, and he was a great guy. He really was. So,
Yeah. Wow.
um,
Man,
he.
well, it's that kind of thing too, that those stories that people are going to hear on Sunday, April 26th from 1 to 3 with this panel. I mean, you and I could talk for 3 hours about your history, about everybody you ran into and all that. But I know that when you came into town, now, first of all, I was reading up a little bit about you. You went to school. Now, people that are in media school or broadcast journalism and all that stuff, did you go to school in New York for announcing and speech? That was like the major.
Where'd you get that?
I do my deep dives.
Yeah. The New York School of Announcing and Speech. Yeah, I
That's
went
like
to.
that's like the media school now, right? Broadcast media. It's announcing and speech. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. I went to two schools. That was one of them. But yeah, that was major for me at that point, and that was about 1966,
Okay.
60, about 66,
Yeah, yeah. But
65, 66.
when you came to Chicago too, I mean, you were on WVON, you were on WGCI. I mean, but VON back then, that was like a huge station, right?
Yeah, but the problem with that thinking is when people always associate me with VON, because I did work there
Yeah.
several times after the heyday. I wasn't
Oh,
there during the heyday with Herb Kent and
yeah.
all the major guys. I wasn't there then, but I knew everybody, and people always associate me with that, and I'm glad because it makes me feel like I was like part of the group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I did work there later on as a disc jockey at one point when the new ownership came in, and the Leonard Chess, the owner of the station, had passed away, and his brother sold the station, and they fired all the old time guys, Herb Kent and all those guys, Purvis Spann, they all got fired, And at some point later on, I was hired to do a morning show as a disc jockey. And
Hmm.
so people connect me with, yeah, you were part of the good guys. Nah, not really, you know what I mean? But I knew then, and then that was the first time I worked there. And then I worked there a second time as a talk show host. So I have a checkered history of radio in Chicago. I did all kinds of things.
Well, that's the thing too that about you specifically, because some people, talk about tunes and they're playing the tunes and that's really what they're doing. But, you're one of those people that, first of all, cross genre, because you know all the different genres because you were in jazz and R&B and Motown and everything else. But also you're a great interviewer. So, sometimes you hear people that are on the radio and they're used to spinning things and talking about liner notes. But then when they go to do an interview, it's a little rough. You're a great interviewer. How did you were you just always natural, like as far as being able to interview people and talk to people because of your personality? Because to me, that's a huge asset. And that's something that a lot of people don't have.
I used to like to talk a lot. So that had a lot to do with it. But I was just fortunate in that I felt a connection with people when I talked to them, more of a conversation than an interview, the Q&A thing. But I try to hit a point at which they could say, I can connect with that. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I had the good fortune of interviewing Ray Brown one time. I was filling in for Larry Smith, and he had set up the interview, and then I think he got ill and couldn't come in that night. So I filled in for him, and I got Ray Brown and Gene Harris, who were appearing at the Jazz Showcase. And so they came in like after midnight because Larry was on overnight, right?
Yep.
So they came in, and I'm so sorry I don't have that on tape. They were so much fun. Ray Brown was a riot, So sometimes I was lucky enough to get people who were willing to communicate, and I was always willing to connect with them and be myself, as opposed to, well, my next question is, do you think that? Nah, I didn't do that.
Right.
It was,
right.
Just conversational. And so that worked for me. And I was, because I did talk radio for a long time too. So, but that interview was one of the ones I treasure, and I don't have a tape.
Oh,
Ray Brown, come on, man.
Well, to your point though, I can remember a lot of people would play at the showcase and then go over to Larry's
Yeah,
show, and then they would be there like 2 in the morning.
that was one of them. That was one of the times. Yeah,
Yeah.
he just wasn't there.
And that's when they were super loose too, because they just played their gig. They probably had a drink at the showcase. Now they got over to the radio station. They're hanging out. They're chilling out. They're done working for the night. And if you're, and to me, when I'm interviewing people, I just like to hang out, right? It's not like 1, 2, 3. I have a,
Right.
And that's when you get the best information because you're having a conversation. It's just like we're hanging out at the bar or hanging out at the Jazz Showcase bar or something, and everybody's just kind of talking about things. And I think that if you're a curious person, you can ask the questions just because it's the conversation you're having.
Right. It's in the course of conversation. And the other thing too is that at that point, with WBEZ, we weren't restricted. I mean, there was no, you were pretty much on your own in terms of making a decision about who to interview and what to ask and all of that, So in situations like that, as you point out, Larry was able to set up a situation where he could have people from the Jazz Showcase who had played that night come in on a regular basis, no restrictions.
Yeah.
And so, sort of freewheeling radio at that point was a really good thing to be involved with.
Oh man. Yeah. To your point though, there's not a lot of that happening anymore. It's so structured, I think, and so dialed in. You have to keep your structure going. You got to hit your commercial breaks and everything else. But that's the beauty of a podcast here and a video cast. So I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, that's true. Let me give you one other experience I had.
Yeah.
I would think I was filling in at that point during the day, and during one of the daytime shows as a talk show host. But it was on a holiday. It was like Memorial Day or the 4th of July. And they said to me, we had set up this performance in studio with Dee Alexander. She's going to come in with a trio and perform on the show. I said, live? Yeah. So that's the first time I met her. And she came in, we did a little interview stuff, and then she performed live in the studio. I mean, we could do stuff like that. It was just so amazing. This was during the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because again, it was a holiday, and it was sort of a holiday presentation,
Mm-hmm.
So great memories of stuff like that.
Well,
really.
That's when the magic happens too, because you don't know what's going to happen, and that's usually when the best stuff happens.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to encourage everybody to get over there Sunday, April 26th from 1 p.m. to, excuse me, 3 p.m. Cultural Center, 78 East Washington. Everybody knows where it is. Our Jazz Life, a celebration of the history of jazz radio in Chicago, part of the International Jazz Celebration here in Chicago. Richard Steele, among Mark Ruffin, Dan Binder, Dave Freeman, and many, many others are going to be on this panel telling stories just like this and talking about the history of Chicago jazz. And I can't wait to be there. So, Richard, fun catching up with you. I wish we had a lot more time because you and I could probably start talking for like 4 hours, but
Probably.
Hopefully I'll see you on Sunday, the 26th, and be able to catch up a little bit more in person.
No question about it. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to you, man. It's been one of the guys that used to play with you, Eric Schneider, was a favorite of mine.
Oh, yeah.
Hell of a guy, tenor player. So hope to see you soon. We'll see you on Sunday, and we're going to have some fun.
I think so. And of course, everybody that's watching, all the information's on chicagojazz.com. And until next time, hopefully I will see somebody out on the scene.